Good evening, all. Thank you for joining me this evening. Welcome back to Coaching You For You. I am your host, Annette, here live. Thank you. Have a seat. Let's chat for a bit. I want to talk a little bit about our enemies and how we deal with them. So often we misunderstand where we are with them and what they mean. And of course, most folks would tell you, oh, I don't have any enemies. We all have enemies, every single one of us, whether we recognize them or not. We absolutely have them. And how we deal with them is important because it can make the difference in how we receive what they put out. And an enemy is simply someone who is hostile and not very kind in dealing with us. They will often mistreat us and misbehave when dealing with us. But I share often, and I mean this sincerely, when we are in disagreement with folks, we cannot afford to take every disagreement as a win or lose situation. Because when we do, what happens is we disengage from our authentic selves in trying to match them. And it's often a mismatch. Remember that. That's important. It's often a mismatch. And so, in dealing with our enemies, we have to understand that the hostility and the behavior most often won't have anything to do with us. Now, when we've done things and we give people a reason, that's a different story, but that's not what we're dealing with tonight. We're dealing with when we have enemies, how, to best handle it. And tonight I'm sharing my experience, strength, and hope. And I tell you that often because that's a fact. I'm not a genius. I don't know everything, but what I know, I know. And so, when dealing with our enemies, the important thing to remember is this: what they're feeling and what they think of us has absolutely nothing to do with us. What people think of us has nothing to do with us. And our enemies will often behave in a way that will sometimes give us a reason to pause and take a look at ourselves to see where we are in it. And once you find yourself in it, if you've done something wrong, I don't have a problem apologizing if I've done something wrong. Most often, the slight is usually in their mind and something I'm not often aware of. I'm usually not aware of it. And enemies will behave as they do based on what they think and feel. And if you learn, as I have, to simply let people live, you will find that all of your enemies will eventually take a seat somewhere, unless you give them a reason to stay. And so tonight, I'd like to tell you what worked for me. I have a few. Have you ever had somebody who's been absolutely crazy obsessed with you for no reason at all? Just obsessed. You cannot do anything right. With your enemies, that's usually the case. Can't do anything right. Don't bother trying. If you've misbehaved, apologize. And you'll find that sometimes, even when you apologize, it doesn't make a difference. Our enemies are going to do what they do. And stepping back and allowing them to be their authentic self is important for my sanity. I've learned to do that. I've also learned, the lessons for me have been great because here's what my enemies have taught me. They've taught me what not to do. They've taught me how not to behave. They've taught me that I can't let everybody into my house. My enemies have taught me I can't let everybody into my head. My enemies have taught me that when my children were young, I couldn't allow my children to be around any and everybody. not because of anything other than my obligation to protect them and ensure that they were safe. My enemies have taught me so much. The lessons that I've learned have been valuable. They've been valuable. When I'm wrong, I want to apologize. When I'm right, I want to stand my ground and often step to the side, and what doesn't apply, let it fly. And I say that all the time for a reason. What doesn't apply, let it fly. Because the lessons I've learned have been invaluable. You're not going to get along with everybody. Everybody's not going to be your friend. People will like you or dislike you based on what their friends tell them, what other people tell them. They're hostages, leave them alone. Hostages are expensive to maintain. And when you get into that, and when you behave like that, and when you get into what they think, what they feel, what they say, what they do, you lose yourself. Let people be. If they like you, they like you. If they don't, they don't. Your circle and who and what you deal with will be your life lessons as well. There are people you dislike. And hopefully, in that, you've learned something from them. I promise you this, there's not one person I haven't learned anything from. No names included here, but I've dealt with a person that I had to come to understand had some mental health issues. She was totally unreasonably, no, she is total, totally and unreasonably obsessed with me. Everything I do, everything I say, everything I wear, everything I drive, where I live, what I do, what I'm doing, everything. And it took a while for me to understand, having not had any real relationship with this person at all, except a casual hello, goodbye, and maybe some business. I didn't understand it. But I had to come to understand that mental illness also presents in this way. And what doesn't apply, let it fly. Your enemies, if you will allow them, I promise you from my experience, will teach you some things. Will teach you some things. It will bring you to a point where you come to understand and accept that, you can't change anybody. And if somebody doesn't like you, trying to change that will change you, and not always in the best way. Be who you are, do what you do, and learn from your enemies. Anybody who comes in your presence, you should learn from. But that also includes your enemies. And most time we spend so much time in battle with them, trying to go back and forth with them, trying to prove that we're right, they're wrong, we're this, they're that. We're on this side, they're on that side. Leave it alone. You'll be happier for it. There's nothing better than peace. And when people have misjudged you, leave them where they are. Because anybody who has a real interest in knowing you will give you a chance and they'll get to know you. And those who don't won't. And there'll always be that little crowd, that little mingling crowd that will attempt at every opportunity to define who you are. I share this often and it's real. Don't worry about what they think. Your character will always speak for you. Don't ever seek revenge with your enemies. It's not worth it. God, in whom I believe, whoever you believe in is already with me. I choose God. God hits harder than any of us. Let him do his work. Don't waste your time. Keep your peace and understand that your enemies come along to teach you. Don't miss the lesson. Don't. There will be family, there'll be friends, there'll be lovers, there'll be exes, there'll be everything that sometimes you will have difficulty with. And sometimes some of those people, as hard as it is for you to accept, will also become your enemies. And when they do, don't waste your time fighting with them. Learn from them. Your enemies have a lot to teach you. Don't miss the lesson. Keep your ears, your eyes, and your heart open. Once you start fighting with your enemies, you lose the ability to function in your authentic self. You lose the ability to function. Understand that everybody has enemies. It's not personal to you or me. It's not. Be who you are, do what you do, be your best self, and always treat people good because you never know what people are going through. And don't waste your time trying to get revenge and fight with your enemies. You waste a lot of energy that way. And you do know energy, especially yours, is expensive. Hold on to yours. Keep the good vibes. Every tribe is not your vibe. Every vibe is not your tribe. Remember that. You can't be with everybody. You're not going to get along with everybody. Everybody's not always going to like you. Everybody's not always going to want to deal with you, and that's okay. Find your circle and be in it. Don't fight with your enemies. That's my message tonight. Don't fight with your enemies. Learn from them. They can best teach you how to look in the mirror at yourself and remember who and what you don't want to be. That's right. They'll teach you if you'll let them. Don't waste your energy on them. I want to thank you for joining me here tonight at Coaching You For You. It is a pleasure to be with you. I welcome you back every Wednesday at 8:05 p.m. Learn from your enemies. They got a lot. They got a lot. They got a lot. They have a lot. They got a lot to teach you. Don't miss the lesson or the message. Get with it. Learn something different. You think your friends can teach you? Get an enemy, and I promise you, you will learn some things that you haven't thought of or imagined. But the best thing you'll learn is who you are. Know who you are, where you are, what you want, and where you're going. Hey guys, I'm floating around somewhere between the moon and New York City. Have a great evening, and thank you again for joining me tonight. Good night.